Hey everyone, Andrew back again and welcome to another video. And as you can tell from the title, I'm here with a contest entry for Horrific Nightmares JM 400 subscriber contest. So first of all, Jason, congratulations on 400 subs, certainly well deserved. And if you're not subscribed to Jason, I will be leaving his channel link in the description box below. I'm sure most of you that watch my horror content already know who he is, but if not, definitely check him out. I highly recommend doing so. So Jason, you wanted to know a couple of questions from us, and this contest sounds like a lot of fun. So yeah, the first question was, what is your favourite independent slasher? So I have one of those picked out. And then you wanted some recommendations of some lesser known horror movies, which I also have about 15 of those to get through. So I'm not really going to go into great length about the movies that I recommend. I will quickly mention what they're about and I'll leave the rest up to you if they sound interesting. But yeah, with that being said, let's get on with the entry. Okay, so my answer to question one, what is your favourite independent slasher film? I'm going to have to go with The Killage. This is a really low budget, really independent slasher filmed up in Queensland, Australia. I think it came out about 2011, 2012, something like that, so it's still relatively recent, I guess. This one is really good though. It's super self-aware. It pretty much has every slasher cliche under the sun. But for how independent it is, and especially how low budget the movie is, you wouldn't really know it. It's really well done. It makes the most of its budget, that's for sure. It basically centres around a group of people on a weekend work retreat, and of course you know how it's going to play out. They all get picked off one by a killer that's actually within the group. The kills are really good. There's a good mixture of horror and comedy elements. As I said, super self-aware, has a lot of your traditional slasher cliches, but everything works really well. So that is The Killage. However, I'm not too sure how easily you'll be able to pick up a copy, because as far as I know, this Australian DVD from Monster Pictures is the only release that this movie has had. I haven't checked out whether it's uploaded to YouTube or not, but yeah, if Jason, somehow you can check this movie out if you haven't already, I definitely highly recommend it. Okay, so question two is, you wanted some recommendations for some lesser known horror movies. I've tried to do my best here. It's always tricky to know obviously what movies people have seen or have not seen, but I've tried to pull out a mix from my collection that I definitely consider to be lesser known, kind of underrated, and I've done my best to mix it up with the genres as well. So with that being said, the first recommendation goes to Splinter, which is a really good modern creature feature. I love the setting. It's set in a gas station in the one location pretty much the whole movie, which works really well. It doesn't have a big cast, and the creature effects look really good, so that's Splinter. Next up we have Housebound, and you may have seen this because it did have quite a lot of hype and was pretty talked about when it first came out, but I wanted to mention it anyway because I feel like it's sort of been pushed aside and not too many people really talk about this anymore. This is a really good movie from New Zealand, and if you're familiar with the quirkiness of early Peter Jackson films, you kind of get this similar vibe within this movie. Obviously completely different to the Peter Jackson films, but it definitely has that Kiwi/New Zealand quirkiness to it. It's kind of hard to explain because it mixes a whole lot of genres into one, but basically it centres around a young woman under house arrest, and yeah, it has comedy elements, it has family drama elements, and then it has a really good sort of haunted house ghost story element to it as well. So that's Housebound. Next up we have Red Ink. This is an Australian horror film. It's pretty unique and different because this one centres around a group of office workers that are being held captive by an insane man. This is known as Inhumane Resources in America, so if you're looking to track this movie down, if it sounds interesting, if you haven't seen it, In America it's called Inhumane Resources. But yeah, this is really, really good. If you're a fan of Office Space, which I'm not too sure if you are, but if you are, and you've never seen this, you'd probably quite enjoy it. So that's Red Ink or Inhumane Resources. Next up we have Satan's Little Helper, and I've always considered this to be fairly underrated. It's super cheesy, but I think it's the perfect movie for this time of year because it is Halloween related. So definitely check this one out if you haven't already. Next is Dream Home, and I've talked about this in many different videos before, but I am going to mention it once again because I do consider this to be criminally underrated. This is a really good Asian slasher film, pretty unique and different because it is really story and character driven, and the killer is female. That's not a spoiler because you pretty much know the killer from the start. This one is extremely brutal and nasty and violent in terms of the kills as well. So that is Dream Home. Probably what I'd consider to be the most criminally underrated film within this list is Hounds of Love. This one is fairly recent, and I think it officially came out last year, but it's only had like disc-based releases this year. This one's actually based on a true serial killer story from Perth, Australia. Back in the 80s there was a couple known as the Burnies who would kidnap, rape and kill teenagers / young women, and this movie is essentially loosely based on that. Really, really well done, especially from an acting standpoint. I don't think I've seen more realistic character portrayals in a horror movie than I have in Hounds of Love. The character portrayals are just incredible. Watching this movie, I actually felt like I was there with the characters' experience and going through what they were going through from start to finish. It was just amazing. So if you are a fan of serial killer films, this is probably my favourite serial killer film of all time. It's just phenomenal, so highly recommend this one. Next up we have Storm Warning, which is another Australian film. This one is a revenge film, so pretty standard typical revenge fare within this film. It's pretty short, pretty easy to get through. There's not really a lot to say about it, but when it comes to the revenge sequences, they are pretty brutal and nasty. Next we have My Super Psycho Sweet 16. This is an MTV slasher film, but don't let that fool you because this one is really, really good. It stands out to me because the characters are pretty much age accurate, which, as everyone knows that is familiar with slasher genres, you mostly get people in their 20s, sometimes 30s, playing teenage characters. It's kind of crazy, but in this one, their age is pretty accurate, which to me is a good thing. Obviously, this centres around a 16th birthday party, but yeah, really, really good, and there's some good kills in this one as well. Next up, we have Cockneys vs. Zombies, and as you can tell from the title, it's very, very similar to Shaun of the Dead. I actually think this is more enjoyable than Shaun of the Dead, especially from a character and comedy standpoint. This one is a ton of fun. Pretty interesting take on the zombie genre / apocalypse, and this one actually centres around a group of elderly at a old people's home, which is a lot of fun. The oldies in this are hilarious. There's some really, really funny moments when some of the elderly are trying to escape the zombies. Obviously the elderly are pretty slow. That's just hilarious. Next up we have Bloody Bloody Bible Camp, which is a independent, really, really cheesy slasher film set in a Bible camp, obviously. Yeah, super cheesy, super low budget, super independent, but it is good fun. Next up we have In Their Skin, and this is one that I don't think I've ever heard anyone actually talk about, at least that I've seen from their videos. This is a really, really cool and interesting take on the home invasion genre. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil anything, but if you have a good look at the cover, it kind of gives a little bit of a hint of what this movie is all about. But yeah, if you've never seen this one and you're looking for a really good home invasion film that's kind of different to the norm, definitely check In Their Skin Out. Next up we have The Horseman, which is another one that I don't really think I've heard too many people talk about. This is a really good revenge film, so if you are looking for a new revenge film to check out and you haven't seen this one, I highly recommend it. This is another one from Australia, and this one centres around a father seeking revenge over the death of her daughter who got involved with a pornography ring. That's all I will say. There's some really, really brutal scenes within this movie when it comes to the revenge sequences. So that's The Horseman. Next up we have The Fourth Kind, and this is another one that I don't really hear too many people ever mention. This is one of my favourite sort of sci-fi horror movies, and it's kind of a different take on the genre as well, because it kind of blends in real life sort of documentary style footage, interview footage with film footage, and it works really, really well. Basically it's about a group of residents who are experiencing dreams of being abducted, and they sort of go through therapy and stuff like that. Really, really good. That's The Fourth Kind. Next up we have Evil Laugh, and you may have seen this one already, Jason, I'm not too sure obviously, but this is one that I consider to be kind of lesser talked about, I guess, when it comes to 80s slashers. This one's a lot of fun. It's super cheesy, especially when it comes to the kills, but I really like the characters in this one, and the killer is pretty awesome, and just the whole sort of storyline and premise within this movie's kind of different to a lot of other slasher films as well. So yeah, really cool. And lastly, I am going to recommend another creature feature, that's The Reef. This is actually my favourite shark film next to Jaws, and this one is super effective. It's really, really well done. It's very, very simple in its premise, but super, super effective, and really, really well shot too. It was actually shot up in the Great Barrier Reef up in Queensland, Australia, so, and I believe real sharks were used as well. So yeah, that's The Reef. Alrighty, so that does it for my contest entry for you, Jason, Horrific Nightmares JM. I hope you've enjoyed my entry. So once again, 15 movie recommendations, and then my favourite independent slasher is The Killage. So obviously if there's some within the stack, which hopefully there is, that you have not seen, definitely check them out and let me know what you think of them. So yeah, that's it for my entry. To everyone else that's planning to enter or that's already entered, best of luck. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.